What's going on, y'all? Chuck Nutface here. Today we're going to talk about these three knives on the table. So we have three knives from, American makers, small batch production, perhaps we should call them, perhaps mid-tech. I don't know about mid-tech. That name is kind of antiquated in my opinion. I don't really know what mid-tech means anymore. I mean, it used to be machine parts and hand finishing. I don't know if that's still really the case. But yeah, we do have, let's call them mid-tech knives right here from US-based manufacturers, small shops, individual owners. So we've got a McNees PM Mac 2 3.5. We also have a Demko 8020S, and we have a Les George Mark III folder. So I think there's, even though these knives look differently, I think there's a lot of similarities amongst them. And really based on the fact they're all pretty much in the same price point. These two are very similarly priced. The McNees is a little bit more expensive, but I think they kind of fall into the same pricing category. They're all, like I say, small batch, USA made knives by makers who have really established themselves and established strong reputations for quality, innovation, things of that nature, and designs. So kind of going through, and they all do have MagnaCut blades. I mean, really, that's incidental because they've all had different types of steel in them before. Les George has historically worked with, well, many different, most recently XHP. The 8020 series of knives have had all sorts of kinds of steel, 3V, XHP, maybe XHP, I'm not sure, 20CV, etc. And XHP most recently on the Mac 2s. These are all, however, in MagnaCut. Now, just incidentally, from what I know, McNees is doing 63, 64 on their MagnaCut. I believe these are coming in around 62, which is slightly under than what the recommended, and I'm just not sure about the Les George as far as hardness goes. And so when it comes to MagnaCut, too, just as an aside, small batch production companies, small makers, I will trust MagnaCut heat treats from these guys, whereas opposed to larger companies. I know there's a MagnaCut invasion. We are in full swing. Everything is MagnaCut. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And so everybody and their cousin is using MagnaCut steel in absolutely everything, but that is going to leave a lot of room for error as far as heat treat goes. I've kind of talked about that ad nauseum, so I don't really want to go down that road again. But when it comes to MagnaCut steel, I will trust smaller manufacturers rather than major manufacturers when it comes to that stuff for heat treating. So all of that said, we do have two similar lock-in styles on these two knives right here. They're both obviously frame lock folders, and this of course is the Shark Lock, which is exclusive to Andrew Demko, is his design. Now, Cold Steel does have something similar with the Atlas Lock, which I'm sure, borrowed pretty heavily from that while Andrew Demko was employed with Cold Steel. However, this is 100% his design right here. So, kind of getting into a little bit more of it, they all have somewhat similar blade lengths, as they're all in that 3.5-ish, sub 4-inch category. So this is just under 3.5 inches at about 3.4. And basically most of that is due to the fact that this is the quote-unquote spear point, even though it's really not a spear point. That's a spear point right there. But that's what McNees is calling this one, the spear point blade. It's really just more of a clipped point right there, more dramatic drop point on the folder. And then, of course, the Les George Mark III. This one is going to be about a 3.75-inch blade, and then about a 3.6 or so, almost a 3.7, 3.6 on the Demko 8020S. Now, this is the Mac 2, while the smallest of the group. It is the most efficient when it comes to size. It is really kind of the blade to handle ratio champion, where you've got almost a 3.5-inch blade. You got a 3.75-inch handle and a 3.5-inch blade, or just under that. I mean, you really can't get much closer in blade to handle ratios than that. On the opposite end of the spectrum is really this one right here, where you've got a 4-inch, 5-inch handle on this one and a 3.75 inch blade. So there's a lot of real estate in the handle on this one right here, as opposed to this one. But this one still, my hand fits. I have a medium-sized hand, small to medium-sized hand, and my hand fits very comfortably around the Mac 2 3.5. Obviously, I'm going to have the same experience here with the ergos, but if you have really big hands, this is probably going to be a better choice as far as knives go. And then the grip on this is certainly the most distinctive in its shape, and we'll kind of get into that right now too. It fits great in the hand. The ergos are great, but this one is definitely going to be the most tactical of looking of the three knives, at least. So these two are definitely more EDC looking types of knives. The 20S with its clip point blade, and then of course the Mac 2. And this one's definitely going to be your most tactical looking knife. Now, from an EDC standpoint, all of them carry quite well. They really work well in the pocket. The best pocket clip is going to be on the Les George. Now, it does have quite a bit of ramp right there, but it is the easiest in and out of the pocket. And then these two are about tied for second. Now, historically, there are a lot of complaints about the Mac 2's pocket clip, and Lynch Northwest makes one. In fact, Lynch Northwest makes them for the 8020 as well. So they do make a replacement pocket clip. I have not noticed really a problem with this, but it's not the easiest in and out of the pocket. It is a very stiff clip, but it's really not anything too severe. This one I found to be fine. It's gonna ride pretty high out of the pocket, but that doesn't bother me at all. This one's gonna ride about right there as well. But this one is definitely gonna be easiest in and out of the pocket. And a lot of that is due to the fact that these scales are quite smooth. The texturing on this one right here, while smooth, for whatever reason, it does provide more of a grip, and it's probably that atomic finish on there. It doesn't feel it when you just rub your fingers across it. However, it does feel naturally like it's got some more grip, and it's just that, I don't even know what it is, that chalkiness to it of that. It's a little bit more tactile than the smoother stonewash of the Les George. In fact, that was one of my primary complaints about the Les George Mark III, was the fact that the handle scales could stand to be roughed up just a little bit more, but still not bad at all. From an action standpoint, these two are running on bearings, whereas this one is running on phosphor bronze washers. And really, this is such a great phosphor bronze washer experience. I've talked about that in my review of this knife. It really is just fantastic on washers. I mean, it's right up there with any of the best that you could think of. When we're talking Chris Reeve, when we're talking Spartan Harsey, it's really going to be some of the best action that you're going to find on a washer, PB washer knife. And these, of course, are on bearings, like I said. The action on this is very distinctive. It's kind of got that axis lock feel to it, and no, I don't have a ram lock on me or close by, or that ram lock feel. In fact, they all borrow. I think the ram lock borrows pretty heavily from in feel from the shark lock right there. But you know, it's definitely super fidgety. I mean, this, especially the 20.5, is going to be, you know, it's kind of known as a real fidget monster right there. So that is to be noted. And this is also on bearings. I believe these are on Delrin bearings. I have not taken this apart. Have I taken this apart? I have taken it apart. Yeah, they're on. It's on, I believe, Delrin bearings, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, really smooth action. Nothing to complain about there whatsoever. Nice drop on that too. This one was a little tight out of the box. I kind of addressed that, so I made some mods to it, but all's well that ends well right there. From an everyday carry perspective, these two are probably going to be the best, or the best choices from an EDC perspective. This is certainly can be an everyday carry knife. However, it is going to be a little bit more in the tactical realm, at least from looks. Now, it's certainly functional with that higher flat grind. So it's a nice slicer. I've used this a fair amount, and it's a just fine slicer. However, it's not probably the one that's going to jump to mind the most when you think of EDC knives. So it's probably going to be bottom of that category. These two right here, I mean, really it's just going to be a matter of preference on what you like. Now, this is the hollow ground blade. So it is going to be a little slicier than the standard PM Mac 2s. So it is hollow grind. It's a shallow hollow grind, but it is there. I don't know if it's going to come across in camera, but it is there. And this one, of course, is a flat grind. It is a full flat grind the whole length of the blade. So that makes it very nice from a cutting perspective. So that is something that I really appreciate about this. Most of them have more of a saber grind or just a high flat grind, rather, of the 8020s and 20Ss. There are a couple. I have seen the other Bowie, which is a more dramatic Bowie style blade, more dramatic clip point. I've seen a few of those with full flat grinds, but this one, of course, does have the full flat grind as well. So I think I inadvertently, when I picked this up, I got maybe one of the best versions of this knife with that grind right there. I mean, this thing's just, it's a monster when it comes to cutting. As far as sharpening goes, these two, they resharpen just fine. This MagnaCut, it hasn't been a problem getting a nice edge on there. This one, they're both very easy to sharpen in the sense that you have a lot to clamp onto if you're using a fixed angle system like a KME, which is what I use. This one's probably the easiest right there, and then this one right here. I haven't tried to sharpen the Mark III yet. It shouldn't be too much of a challenge, but you can see from right there, you may have an issue with an angled system or even a stone of this kind of pseudo guard, this faux guard right here. From the design of the knife from a sharpening standpoint. So remains to be seen on how that goes. This is still on the factory edge. Yeah, so really when it comes down to these three, I think there's a lot of similarities that I just wanted to do a video on the fact that, yeah, they're very different knives, but I think they come from a similar place from a design standpoint or a manufacturing philosophy. I think that's probably a better term to use. Certainly, this one is a great work knife. This is going to serve you really well no matter what. Same with the 8020 or the 8020S. These are both excellent choices. It's hard-working EDC knives. This one is going to be a little less, at least on the nose from an EDC standpoint, but you can certainly do something like that. So how would I rank these three? Man, that's tough. I would say this would be one, just for my own personal preferences, but I think this for the masses would be one. I think this is probably the most useful to the most amount of people, would be the Mac 2. But this would be 1, 2, 3 for my favorites. So something about the 20. I've always liked the 8020S. Or I shouldn't say that, that's not true, but I have had an 8020 in the past, and it was just a little too chunky. And I think this 20S version is just fantastic, so I'm going to say right now, for me, that's my favorite. This is my second favorite just because I wanted one of these for a long time, and I wasn't able to get one, so I finally got my hands on one. I was like, yeah, that thing's pretty dope. I really like that. And then this, I mean, it's just such a great knife, so to call it third, I mean, it doesn't mean it's bad in any way. It just doesn't speak to me in the same way that these two do. I think I just prefer the size, these larger models, over the Mac 2. But however, man, every time I put this in my pocket, I just feel like I want to do work with this thing. So I don't know, man. It's a tough call, y'all. But in any case, that's going to do it for me. I hope you got a little bit of insight out of this video. Give me a follow on Instagram at Chuck_Numbface. Do consider subscribing to the channel. I certainly do appreciate that. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Share this video out there. And that is going to do it for me. Peace.